Michael Wade Nedrick, born in Brooklyn, New York, and raised in Flatbush by Jamaican parents. Growing up in a Caribbean household, education was at the top priority, and Michael often found himself having to balance his interest in sports, music, fashion, and dance. Although he was a student athlete at Midwood High School, Michael had dreams to attend Syracuse University, even as a freshman. However, his journey to this campus would be rather unique in nature and not by way of athletic scholarship. Unable to afford Syracuse after graduating high school due to a lack of being awarded financial aid, Michael attended and graduated from SUNY Oswego with a BA in Mass Communications and Broadcasting. While there, Michael would become a brother of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, which would open the door to connections with nearby brothers here at Syracuse University. As a natural communicator, Michael would tour all of the campuses in his tri-state area throughout and after his undergraduate studies, which would eventually land him an opportunity to host a show for Interactive One called Casbar, found online. It was here that Michael's career should shift from MC to an on-camera digital media personality. Today, Michael's presentation will answer the question of this year's theme, What Matters Next, by drawing our focus to who matters next. Michael will not only share on his experience with what matters in his life, but he will challenge us to think on what we all can do to impact the what, or the who, that matters in our lives. Join me in welcoming Michael for his talk on who matters just as much as what.
Who matters just as much as what matters. When I got the news of the theme for this year's TEDx conversation at Syracuse University, I found myself in between two very, very strong emotions. Now, those emotions range from extremely passionate because I had something to say. A little bit about that, I always have something to say. It's the reasons why I got removed from some classrooms when I was younger. It's the reason why I got certain grades on my report card. However, the other emotion was an emotion of an unsettling confusion. Because as I sat down and really asked myself, what matters next, I began to realize that the answer isn't as simple as we may interpret it to be. What matters next varies from person to person. What's next in innovation may interest you. What's next in technology may interest you. What's next in the breakthroughs of this world and society may interest you. What's the next idea? I know that interests me. However, it seems as if our society is always concerned with what is next. The what. Now, please raise your hand if you like money and you think money is next. Okay, I would hope so. I would hope so. Wealth and finance is what some of us thinks is next and what matters. However, I know some of us in here are interested in technology. Raise your hand if you think artificial intelligence or technology is what's next. We had some presenters on that. We have some people interested in that in the audience. However, future developments are always about the what. My question is, what about the who? What about the who? This is why I was unsettled by the question. Because we always seem to ask what matters next, and we overlook the who. Who matters? That's not a question, that's a statement. Who matters because who determines the outcome of what? Things don't just do themselves. This TEDx conversation didn't do itself. Shout outs to the organizers. But the who is what dictates the outcome of the what. Allow me to share something with you. I've been speaking on stages for quite a bit of years. And every time before I jump on the stage, I find myself in the green room asking a question. And that question is, who is Michael Wade? No, I'm not losing my mind. I'm not speaking in third person. I am very nervous. However, I need to ask myself who I need to be for what it is that I'm about to do. On your screen, you'll see two images. On one side, I'm sitting on the floor, and I'm working with youth. Not on the stage, I'm working with young people. And I ask myself, who do I need to be for what it is that I need to do for these young people? I don't need to come dressed like this for young people, as you can see in the image. On the other side, you'll see me on stage doing what I'm doing now. And I always ask myself, who do I need to be to relay a message to an audience that matters? Notice I said an audience that matters. Because I am not the only who that matters. But why does the who matter? Why do I matter? Why do you matter? Allow me to explain. See, the TEDx conversation is a series of speakers who speak on things that they know of. TEDx is built by the who. Shout outs to Ted, whoever he is. But what I want us to all understand is that TED has selected all of us based off of our experiences. And here's some of my experience. Now, when I'm on stage, I ask myself, who is Michael Wade? However, when I'm dealing with youth, I'm somebody else. It's almost like I'm Clark Kent. They call me Mr. Mike. Mr. Mike, Mr. Mike, Mr. Mike. What would you like? I have to figure out who it is I need to be for those kids, and I've been that for longer than I've even been on stages. For 20 plus years of my life, I've worked with young people. I've worked with young people since I was a young person. When I was in high school, I was working with junior high schoolers. When I went off to college, I returned home and continued working with high schoolers. When I graduated from college, I returned home and continued working with high schoolers. However, I was also on tour doing what I do on stages. And then the young people that I started to interact with began to grow. And then I started to ask myself, is this what matters next for me, being on stages? Yes, I achieved some of my dreams and my goals, but what really matters next? As you'll see, my least amount of experience is in social work. I am currently a grad student here at Syracuse University in the School of Education, studying for my master's in social work. Because of my experience, I would not recommend that I offer any of you therapy at this point in time. But what I can do is communicate a message that can justify and tell you as to why I got to where I am now. The experience of the who is what influences the success of the what. Without experience, we will not be successful. Shout outs to all of my peers and co-speakers here at this TEDx, because without our experiences, there is no conversation. This is why the who matters. This is why the success of the what is determined by the who. Experience builds character. Experience equates to preparation. What you've been through is the reason as to why you are here today. And by here, I don't only mean in these seats. I mean where you are right now in life. Because it matters. However, without experience, without your experiences, without my experiences, even the best of whats will not succeed. The proper preparation of the who is what is essential for the longevity of the what. So let's look at the what that matters when who matters. There are two individuals on the screen. I guess you could say they're known for making some good trouble in what matters. However, these two individuals are very different. They have different ideologies. One the good brother Martin Luther King, he stands for nonviolence. Respect. Not that Malcolm X doesn't, but when he walks into the spaces, he understands that we can't meet the same energy in this world that we find. We have to combat it with something else. The next individual, Malcolm X, different type of mentality. I'm pretty sure we know that, right? Please raise your hand if you know Malcolm X. Okay, so I don't gotta get as deep as I would like to, but by any means necessary, Malcolm X will get what he needs to get done. Now, when these two individuals collaborate on something that matters, we get to a place that we are in today, where life for African Americans is better because of these two individuals. What we know today as life, as people of color, is in a better standing because of who these two gentlemen are and were. So if the who matters just as much as the what, then who's the who that matters? I love words, so this is when it gets kind of interesting, you know? So I'll ask again. If who matters just as much as what, then who's the who that matters? Is it me? Is it you? The first thing that we need to do is understand that there's a symbiotic relationship between the what and the who. As you can see, the image of the chicken and the egg. Now, some may say the chicken is the who and the egg is the what. But let's just say the relationship is what we're paying attention to. And when you pay attention to that relationship, you begin to realize that there are two kinds of who's. There's a who that's influenced by the what, and there's a who that influences the what. And this is when the question gets interesting. Which one are we? Utilizing what matters to identify, encourage, and empower who matters. Right now, I'm utilizing what matters, which is this stage, for the TEDx conversation. Hopefully, I'm identifying and empowering each of you to understand that you matter just as much as I matter. And if we don't understand that charge, then what happens next, what matters next, could be in jeopardy. Maybe we should look at another example. Please raise your hand if you know who's on the screen. Okay. For those of you that don't, this is a gentleman who goes by the name of Denzel Washington. I admired him growing up. I thought every movie that he was in was something that I could do. Maybe not Training Day. But he got game. I resonated with that. However, his most recent film is Highest to Lowest, where he plays an executive in the music industry, an industry which I'm familiar with. And the other person on the other end of the plot is somebody who could have used a mentor. Now, the irony in that is there are crucial parts in the film, and you should see it. But Denzel gets to portray who he actually is when it comes to what matters. Now, Denzel Washington is a product of the Boys and Girls Club of America. He's a beneficiary of the resource in that youth development organization. Now, when somebody like him does what they need to do in life, they never forget who and what got them there. And then he becomes a who that matters and affects the change for what matters. Denzel Washington is an advocate, a proud advocate of the Boys and Girls Club. And that's where he contributes all of his time. Well, a good amount of his time, but a lot of his energy. So what matters next? The youth are who matters next. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't matter at the same time as the youth. We're going to get to that. But the youth matter next. John F. Kennedy states, "Children are the world's most valuable resource and its best hope for the future." We are no longer children. So what we need to invest in is the future. I like to quote the great Whitney Houston, who states that she believes that children are the future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. How many of you have interacted with a young person as of late and taught them something? Okay, we got some people raising their hands. Shout outs to y'all. Here's another question. Please raise your hand if you know a young person. Okay, I'm gonna get to everybody who knows a young person in a minute. But what if institutions placed more value on who matters? Who matters? The youth? More organizations would value relationships over results. Schools would strengthen their culture and not worry about grades, because once you strengthen the culture, the kids would love to be in the school and then they'll perform better where they are. What if policy would begin to prioritize the people that are involved in the future developments? There's a lot of policies that are being implemented that don't take into account who matters. That's the concern. But what can we do for the youth? Raise your hand again if you know a young person. You need to be the other who that matters for that young person. And in the sake of time, I'm just going to jump a little bit forward, or should I say backward, into the young person that I was. So the picture on your left is an image of me leaving junior high school, a time that was extremely trying and challenging for me. Picture on the other side is a picture of me graduating from college for the first time, something that I wanted to do for a very long time. Do you remember being younger? Youth, being young age, that's a what? But do you remember who allowed you to get to the next step and the next level? The individual who's right on the other side of me, his name is Brian Cunningham. He's currently an assembly member. And on his path towards where he wanted to be in life, he decided that I was worth it and that I mattered. So he became who mattered for a young man like me who needed it. Brian always tells me, or used to tell me, that our stories are never our own, which is why I share my experience and why I let you know that who matters just as much as the what, because the story is the what. However, when we share our experience with young people because they do matter, we affect positively, we invest in tremendously, and we empower and enlighten and strengthen what matters next. I've always wanted to say this. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.